The blacksmith, understanding the tools. Somewhere along the way, people stopped understanding the tools they depend on. We still use them, we still trust them, but very few people actually know how they work. If something changed tomorrow, if the system stopped working, would you know how to survive? There was a time when every village had someone who did. They called him the blacksmith. The blacksmith didn't just make tools. He understood metal, how heat changes it, how pressure shapes it, how timing determines whether a tool becomes useful or useless. Metal begins as something rigid, cold, unmoving, but introduce enough heat, and something remarkable happens. The metal begins to glow, dark red at first, then brighter, orange, yellow, until eventually the metal becomes soft enough to shape. That's the moment the blacksmith waits for. Too cold, and the metal cracks. Too hot, and it weakens. But at just the right temperature, metal becomes something new. And with a hammer and an anvil, the blacksmith could turn raw material into tools that kept an entire community alive. Axes, knives, horseshoes, and sometimes more complicated mechanisms. But every tool, no matter how simple or complex, followed the same rule: heat, pressure, control. Understanding those three things meant understanding the tool, and understanding the tool meant understanding survival. The blacksmith, why metal glows. Have you ever noticed something strange about metal? When it gets hot enough, it begins to glow. First a dull red, then brighter, orange, eventually yellow, almost white. This isn't magic, it's physics. Inside every piece of metal are atoms arranged in an organized structure. When metal is cold, those atoms barely move. The structure is rigid, strong, but introduce heat, and the atoms begin to vibrate faster and faster. Eventually, they move so intensely that energy escapes as light. That glow the blacksmith watches for is the metal telling him something. It's telling him the structure is loosening, softening, becoming workable. A skilled blacksmith doesn't need a thermometer. The color of the metal tells him everything he needs to know. Too dark, and the metal won't move. Too bright, and the structure begins to break down. But at the right color, the metal becomes something rare, strong, but flexible, ready to be shaped. That's why blacksmiths didn't just work with tools. They worked with timing, color, heat, and patience, because metal always tells the truth. You just have to know how to listen.